So I did my formal report on how to improve literacy rates via book donation in the Midwest, specifically in the Minnesota area, as that is where I'm from. So as we get going here, just a little introduction to literacy rates. So before we get started, my research question was, are book donations successful at increasing literacy rates? So please keep that in mind as I continue out through this presentation. So some quick facts here. Only 17% of the world remains illiterate today, which is a great number. It's very low across 7 continents. That's awesome. However, it's still 17% and should be much lower than that. So it is a low number, but that means there's still 12,000 children per year that are not reading at the 3rd grade level just in Minnesota alone. And so this table at the right is depicting the percentage of 3rd graders proficient by year from 2006 to 2009. And the numbers have slowly been dropping. In 2006, 81.7% of children were proficient by 3rd grade. But by 2009, 78.5% were only proficient by 2009. So the drop is small, but it's still there, and that is not acceptable because reading at the 3rd grade level is when children make the transition from learning to read and reading to learn. Learning to read is when they understand the basics and they're just kind of figuring out how to comprehend things and how to learn all the words. But when they hit 3rd grade, that's really when they make that transition to reading to learn, which is reading to understand things, reading to better their education, and they're really comprehending and they're reading to get more information and they're excited to read. So it's very important for children to be proficient by 3rd grade because when the literacy rates are low, there's a double expense. According to one of the authors that I researched, Cardoza, she says that a double expense is when literacy rates are low, then there is a poor economy and increased social services. So having a high literacy rate is important because it can increase the economy and the overall well-being of an area, which is very important for the society as a whole. And then lastly, here are just some successful book donations that I had researched. So the first one is CLIF, which is Children's Literacy Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization based in Vermont and New Hampshire. Their goal is to inspire children to read. I will be speaking more about this later, so that's all that I'll touch on it for now. And then the second one is Give a Book, Change a Life, Cape Town Book Donation Project. So this one was located in South Africa, and hundreds of children were given books and audiobooks to listen to and read. These children absolutely loved it. They were able to find joy in reading, and they just wanted to read through all of the books, which then in turn helps their literacy rate increase because they're understanding more and they're getting the basics of reading down. So just before I continue into the results and everything, the methods that I used, I did an empirical research survey. So I sent out a survey via email to 50 U of M students and got all 50 responses back. I will be touching more on the limitations and the results of that survey later in this presentation. Secondly, I consulted the University of Minnesota Twin Cities Library database for my print resources. Thirdly, I researched organizations that are successfully implementing book donations. And lastly, I consulted online articles about like the World Atlas and just different literacy rates to find tables and graphs and stuff as well. So some of the results that were discovered, Minnesota's literacy rate is fairly good. It's in 2014 to 2015, it was at an 82% of those that graduated high school. So that's a really good literacy rate. It's a good high school graduation rate. However, it's still not the best. It could be better. In 2017, though, our literacy rate was up to 91.7, which is great because it shows that we're improving over the years, but it's still not at the best that it could be because as we move on to bachelor's degrees and advanced degrees like master's and doctorates, our percentage drops a lot. So bachelor's degrees in Minnesota are only at 31.5%, and advanced degrees drop significantly lower to only a mere 10.3%. And so, in order to increase those numbers and to improve literacy rates, we need something like the Children's Literacy Foundation. And what is the Children's Literacy Foundation? They are a nonprofit organization that aims to inspire children to read, based in New Hampshire and Vermont. Who they help? The Children's Literacy Foundation helps low-income families, children that live in shelters, refugee children, children whose parents are inmates in prison. They really help anyone and everyone that they can to improve literacy rates and to get children to be reading and to be having fun. And according to the Children's Literacy Foundation, there is a strong correlation between literacy and economic success. They say on their website that children that have not developed basic literacy skills by the time they enter school are 4 times more likely to drop out in later years. And those that do reach adulthood with the lowest levels of proficiency are 43% of them live in poverty, whereas those with strong literacy rates, only 4% end up living in poverty. So it's very important for the economic success and the success of the child and the society to be proficient and have strong literacy skills. So back to some results and limitations of that survey that I conducted. So my survey was a sample size of 50 students. They were all from the University of Minnesota. So the purpose of the survey was to just get the understanding of who would be interested in doing a book donation and if they believed in a correlation between books and higher literacy rates. And so of the students that participated, 47 said that they would be willing to participate in a book donation if it was implemented at the University of Minnesota, which is what this presentation is aiming to do. Secondly, 42% of them, or 42 students, said that access to books creates higher literacy rates. And those 42 people grew up with access to books. So they have personal experience with it, and they're all at the University of Minnesota. But likewise, the fact that they're all at the University of Minnesota is one of the limitations. They were only students. They are all in their process of getting their bachelor's degrees, so they do have high literacy rates already. Also, this survey was short and sweet, 5 to 6 questions, very basic, as I knew people are busy, and if you ask too many questions, they don't want to delve into it. And exactly that, it doesn't delve into the deeper aspects of literacy rates and books. So this survey is not as strong as it could be, and it's not a large age demographic. I only had 2 people over the age of 50 and 2 in their 30s, and so I didn't put them into the survey results because it was not a large sample size. So now we're on to the good part, the discussion of results. So by having higher literacy rates and implementing a book donation to improve higher literacy rates, there's going to be great benefits. These are the 6 that I listed here because I thought that they're very important. You're going to have more high school and college graduates, which therefore leads to a competent future workforce. More people that graduate high school and college and get those degrees, that workforce is going to improve significantly. Likewise, you're going to have reduced costs for underemployed and unemployed because you're going to have a more competent workforce, so therefore your unemployment rate is going to drop. And then one that's very important for people in society is that there's going to be reduced costs associated with crime, and the crime rate and incarceration levels will drop by having higher literacy rates. So it's important to keep those literacy rates high because then everybody will feel safer and the economy will be better. The last 2 are very important. Reduced costs for school social workers. They're not going to have to spend as much to fix things and help people figure their stuff out. And likewise, there's going to be reduced costs for truancy and dropouts. That number is going to decrease when the more literacy people have, the better they're really going to want to better themselves, and therefore they're not going to drop out as often, and they're not going to be as truant, which is really, really beneficial for society as a whole because it really makes the workforce stronger, it drops incarceration rates, and it benefits everybody. So just in my conclusion, my recommendation to the Education Board at the University of Minnesota is that reading books does have a direct impact on literacy rates. It has been proven over and over, and in my formal report you can see the statistics for that. Because literacy rates do correlate to economic success. The higher literacy rate you have, the less poverty you have, the higher workforce, the more productive workforce. And so therefore my recommendation is to implement a book donation at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, to help Minnesota and the surrounding Midwest states to increase literacy rates and improve the society in this region as a whole. Thank you.